I'm Chris McDonough, a retired homicide detective. I've interviewed thousands of people, from serial killers to ministers. Welcome to the interview room.
Hey!
There he is.
Hey, Chris.
How's everybody doing?
Doing great.
Doing great.
Hey, everybody. We're grateful that you're here. Welcome. We appreciate having the opportunity to be here with you tonight. We've got everybody in the house here. We got Maui Girl, Mike Lister, Hillbilly, JRS, Bella Luna, Nancy, MK, Miss Sophie, our mods. We couldn't do any of this without you guys. We're very, very grateful that each of you are here. Kimberly, Roxy, Lynn, Teresa. I'll tell you, we've got a program for you tonight. What a panel! We've put a panel together, and I think you're going to know some of our guests here, but we've also got a great guy here, Steve, who I'm going to introduce here in a minute. But so, who do we have? We've got. Let's see. Who's the guy over here? But Greg Cooper.
Hey.
Greg, just a short intro. Filmer, FBI, BAU supervisor. Tell everybody about yourself and your career.
You don't have to put anybody to sleep out there. Okay, let's see. About over 40 years of law enforcement experience. Started out as a patrolman. Went to a small town police chief when I was about 27, and then went into the FBI. Was with the FBI for 10 years. Was fortunate enough to be able to be assigned as a profiler in the behavioral science unit. Eventually supervised both the VICAP program, a violent criminal apprehension program, and then also the profiling unit for about a year before I came back to Provo, Utah as a police chief. Also, while I was back at the academy, I had the privilege of teaching at the National Academy for about 3 years. And since then, I've worked with the Department of Homeland Security and also as an expert witness, authored a few books, just had a great time. Wouldn't change my career for anything.
Awesome. Great having you here, Coop. We love you, buddy. And my good buddy, Mr. Dean Jackson. No, not like the actor. Not like the actor. From Cold Case Foundation, Deputy Executive Director. Dean, tell everybody about your career and yourself. Give them a little 411, buddy.
Well, Chris, congratulations on a great show. And it's a privilege to be with you tonight. I started out with law enforcement as a deputy coroner and have worked in a lot of different positions, in particular working a lot with victims' families, and have been involved in critical incident debriefings throughout my career, and had the opportunity for quite a few years to work for Greg Cooper. And when he got ready to start the Cold Case Foundation, he invited me to come along, and I've had just an incredible opportunity as well as educational opportunities learning from him. Actually, our guest tonight, Steve Johnson, had a chance to be instructed by him as well. Incredible profiling individual for statement profiling. And so it's just a great privilege to be here, and honored that you'd invite me to tag along with such incredible guys. So thanks, Chris.
Awesome, Dean. Thank you so much. We're grateful that you are here. And now our special guest here tonight, forensic statement analyst Steve Johnson. Steve, what a privilege it is to have you here with these great guys in this wonderful panel. Tell us a little bit about what you do and your career.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I feel like I'm here with a dream team of investigators tonight, for sure. I've been investigating criminal cases for the last 31 years, and 28 years of those at a pretty large police department. I was a detective for most of that time, and I investigated all kinds of cases and assisted in all kinds of cases. I've wrote curriculums for the police academy and for detective schools, and now since I've been retired from the PD for about 3.5 years, I've continued to instruct what we're going to cover tonight. It's, in my opinion, the holy grail of investigations. And once I stumbled onto it, I never looked back. And since that time, I've had the opportunity to have a lot of different great investigators in my class, from federal, Homeland Security, numerous state, local investigators, and some corporate investigators, and mental health therapists, and the list goes on, and attorneys and prosecutors. So it's just the greatest thing ever, and we're going to have a good time tonight with it.
Yeah, we are, Steve. Thank you so much, Coop, Dean. Okay, so here's the lineup. We've got everybody. We've got people from all over the world here. We've got John in Scotland. We've got Australia here. We've got Ireland. We've got England, the UK. Absolutely love all of you here. And let me tell you, you're not going to be disappointed. So here's what we're going to do. Here's my thinking. There have been various statements put out, right? Public statements by Suzanne's husband. So what we're going to do is we're going to break those down. And Steve, we're grateful that with your expertise, I mean, you've trained thousands of people all around the world, and so you're top shelf. And then of course we've got Coop and Dean here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to play some clips that we've put together, and then we're going to come back and we're going to break those down individually. And Steve's going to kind of drive that, folks. Okay. So, and then at the end of that, we're going to let you, the viewer, ask questions, Q&As. And those questions that you may have, you're going to get an opportunity to interact with these guys and maybe get some better understanding of how the criminal mind works. So Dylan, let's tee up the first video that we have, which is, everybody knows it. It's the first 25 seconds put out in the public. Okay.
Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you, we miss you, your girls need you. No questions asked. However much they want, I will do whatever it takes to get you back. Honey, I love you. I want you back, sir.
Okay, we're going to come back to that. So let's go to the next piece that we have. And that is a compilation of various statements.
And she said, Barry, Suzanne is not at the house. Her car's here, but her bike's missing. And I said, that doesn't sound good because she's not answering me either. I'm coming home right now. And that was at 5 o'clock Sunday evening. Suzanne went on a bike ride every day, Lauren. She was an avid biker. If she did not bike around the subdivision, she biked on trails. I don't remember how the conversation went, but I probably said something like, is her bike there? Because her car was there and she's gone. I rushed home, left all my tools at the hotel, called my workers and said, I've got a family emergency. You're going to have to figure this out on your own, and went directly to the site where the bike was. I know for a fact that the sheriffs are embarrassed in how they handle the investigation, and they just want to crawl under a rock about it. So maybe that's why. I have no idea. The sheriff has a lot of explaining to do on what they're doing now, what they did then. I have been searching trails after trails on that dirt bike for my wife. So I'm in the dark here. I don't know what they're investigating, who they're investigating. I know they're investigating me because they've destroyed my family and my life.
The vigil is September 25th for your wife.
Okay.
Will you be there?
Absolutely. Everybody's out there saying, oh, he's got a girlfriend and he's having an affair. Where is it? There's nobody. There's never been another love in my life since 1988. She's a mess head too, just like Jeff. She is mad at me because I fired her and don't let her work for me anymore. She's mad. So they're not going to say anything good about me. I am innocent, 100% innocent. And the social media and the news media has made it seem like I'm a bad guy. Listen, Jeff Puckett was in prison for 9 years. I said, listen, I need to do this job. I will pay you good money to come and help me. I gave him a job and an opportunity. They all jumped on it. That has nothing to do with Suzanne Missy. I didn't do nothing wrong in the hotel. There's cameras all over that place. I did nothing wrong. I did not go to the pool, and I did not get chlorine. I'm sure that they washed the rooms with that for the COVID. I don't know. I smelled it too when I was in there. I've heard the FBI lie. And I know they can legally do that in their investigations, but it just pains me to know that they are doing this to me and my family.
Put it on record, Barry, right now. If people think that you did it, what would you tell them?
Absolutely not. I love my wife. I would never hurt my wife. She is the light of my and my daughter's lives.
I'm really just trying to help you, help Suzanne.
Yeah, I wish I could trust you, but I'm sorry, I just can't.
What would it take for you to trust me? Okay, we got a lot going on there. A lot going on. So, Dill, let's go up to the PowerPoint. And Steve, so we're going to start with you and Coop tonight. And thank you, Lisa Marie. We really appreciate that. So let's go up to the first statement. Steve, take it away. Tell us where we're at.
Yeah, so I think before you even look at the statement, you have to look at the context of how this statement was issued, and the context is that Barry Morphew filmed this and posted this on his own accord. So what this means is that we have no outside contamination. This is his perception of reality at that given time, which was, I believe was it a week after his wife's disappearance or something like that?
Yeah, in that ballpark.
Yeah, so it is a clean, what we call a clean statement. So as such, with no outside influence into this statement, it's what he wants to say. We have to believe it is exactly what he wants to say. And if it wasn't what he wanted to say, he could refilm it. He didn't have to post that. If it wasn't exactly what felt good to him in his mind at that particular time. And so that's what he posted. That's what he refilmed. I don't know if he did some refilming, but this is the end result. And he felt good with it. And that's what he put out there. So that's key going into it.
Okay. Coop and Dylan, let's move the slide to the first sentence. Coop, what do you think?
Well, I think from a behavioral perspective, I look at it and I wonder, first of all, why he's decided to do this on his own. Typically, when you get that level of exposure and you want to make a public statement in a situation like this, that he would be doing this in conjunction with a law enforcement agency. And it's apparent that he's completely on his own. He's independent for whatever his reasons are. Now, he's implied some of those reasons in the allegations and critical allegations he's made against law enforcement. But as such, you have to look at that and say, all right, you're on your own now. You're on your own. You got to stand by yourself upon this story, that's an account that's being created. And you on your own with respect to the statements that you're making. And so this is the first statement he makes. Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there. Well, first he addresses Suzanne and directly, and then he refers to anyone. So he's changing audience. He doesn't know which one for sure to address. Is it Suzanne? If it's Suzanne, to what degree he's implying if Suzanne is aware, then she may have something to do with her own disappearance. If it's anyone else, that anyone else may have something to do with the disappearance. So he's, from my perspective, he's beginning to open up a couple different options here for consideration as to why she's gone and what these circumstances suggest.
Okay, next slide. Steve, what do you think?
Yeah. So we actually have to take into consideration some things. The if that was in the previous slide there. If anyone is out there, it creates this question, and as we go into this, there's a couple other questions we want to ask ourselves is to help the analysis, and that is, what is his priority of posting this? Who is the audience? Like Coop said, he started out addressing Suzanne, but then he shifted to if anyone is out there. He's kind of shifted gears, and so it's not real clear as to who he's addressing. And so it poses this question to us: is he addressing Suzanne? Who is his intended audience? Is it Suzanne or someone else? Is it the general public? There's typically in situations like this, we will find that there's an intended audience, meaning who he is actually addressing Suzanne, and then there's the unintended audience, which often is the general public. And here's an example: when we would monitor, when I was a detective with the PD, we would monitor jailhouse phone calls, and oftentimes those inmates knew that we were monitoring their calls, and so the things that they would say were actually things they wanted us to hear. So their intended audience was the person they were talking to on the other end of the phone, and their unintended recipient was us, the investigators. And so I wonder, that's one of the questions in my mind is, does he have an unintended recipient, meaning the general public? And so as we go into this, we have to ask ourselves that in this particular statement that can hear this, he's posing a question that someone has the ability to hear. That he's posing this to someone that has the ability to hear, that can't, and he said that if. So it's a question of if there is someone that has the ability to hear. This in context of, he started out directing this to Suzanne. And so it poses the question now, in Barry's perception of reality, a week or two after his wife disappears and he posts this, does he have in his mind that there's a question of whether she can hear this or not, if that is his intended audience? And oftentimes his statement will incorporate several different things all at one time, but definitely it poses that question that whether or not she has the ability to hear.
Okay, so let's move on to the next statement. That has you. This is an interesting one. Coop, what's your thoughts on this one? You're muted. That's all right. I've seen your drive too.
I've said some of my best things I've ever heard. I look at this and this is a direct message to the possibility that has you. Now he's no longer talking to Suzanne. Now he's implying he's talking to another part of the audience. It's certainly not the general public that has you. Now he's implying possibly that there's somebody that has you. And he's jumping from addressing Suzanne to making an implied allegation that somebody has her, that this is indicative of a potential abduction or kidnapping.
Okay, so here's a comment right here. Steve, take this. It says, gentlemen, please keep in mind that Barry's upset, confused, and not a public speaker.
Yeah, that's fine. And I could even take it a step further and say, let's give Barry the benefit of the doubt that he's distraught and his wife is missing. And, he's got a lot of things going on in his mind at the time. Okay, well, then his language should reflect exactly that. Let's go back to what I said in the beginning. He has the ability to refilm this. He has the ability to ask someone if this looks okay and whatever. It felt right to him, and this is what he posted. So we're going to actually get a very good reflection of his perception of what's going on in his mind at the time. We got to keep in mind that Barry, he's educated, and I've heard him, other things that he said in that long clip that you played there, Chris. I know that Barry knows how to talk. I've heard some of the way that he words things, and he doesn't have any problem wording. He doesn't have to be a public speaker, but to know how to talk, and Barry's very capable of it.
Yeah, and what's interesting? Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I agree with Coop that he is speaking to whoever it would be that has her at this time. Now it's not Suzanne. It's this person or individuals that has her. So he's shifted gears here directly to her. And what I mentioned before about Barry posing the possibility as he addressed Suzanne, if there's someone out there that can hear this, it's a question that of her not being able to hear, and I'm wondering at this point in time if it's kind of like Barry's processing this, that perhaps Suzanne might not be able to hear, and which would mean like worst case scenario, which goes against human nature. And human nature is that if our loved one disappears, we don't process very quickly. It takes a good amount of time to process that they might not have the ability to hear. They might not be coming back, and we don't go there automatically. And so I don't expect any type of that language from Barry. And if I hear that, it's concerning.
Okay, so next slide. Here's his to-do list. Number 1, whatever. Number 2, it. And number 3, takes. Dean, I want to start down with you for a second. What comes to you when you see this?
Well, there's no focus as far as whatever. So there's nothing specific that he's focusing on, and whatever it takes, he says, to bring you back. I think for me, what's really I think interesting when you take the statements both that he said in this as well as the other statements that we heard, the only place that he really has any negative or aggressive tone to is focused on law enforcement rather than even the people that might have taken him or the situation itself. And that tends to kind of cause me some pause.
Okay, Steve, and then we'll go to Coop. A couple thoughts?
Yeah, so I think we need to stop at the pleas. That if you listen to the audio clip or his video clip, this please actually came at the end of what we just finished, and then there was a long pause between this please and we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. So he actually started his statement with, "Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please." And he stopped after the please, and there was nothing after it. He didn't give us anything that he was requesting. We expect a request with that please. If he's talking with Suzanne, please come home. If he's talking to the alleged abductors, please bring her back. Please take care of her. I expect him to be talking about Suzanne's welfare. That's what loved ones do. They're so concerned about their loved ones. Are they being fed? Are they being taken care of? Are they warm? Or are they, are they ill? Or are they inside? I hope they're at least inside the house and out of the cold and whatever the case is. That's what I expect, something there, but there was nothing. And there was just this long pause afterwards. And so he stopped himself. And so it may be that in his mind, he knew that there was nothing to plead for. I don't know. But what this is it's very typical. I'm starting to wonder now if this is a scripted statement, because this is something that he left that pleas dangling, and it left it up to interpretation, left it up for the listener to interpret what that pleas means. And if we interpret as investigators, we lose. That's exactly what they want us to do, is interpret. And once we step into that arena, we have now enabled them in their deceptive. So if we get through this and we figure out, oh, there's more deception in here, or it's not, we find that he may not be de facto innocent in this whole thing. Well, this is very typical of something that we'd see, because when they script, they typically don't think of everything. They think they can throw the emotion out there, and that we will buy off on the emotion. And a lot of people do. Emotion is powerful. It's one of the most powerful sales techniques in the world, and always has been. And you can't buy off on an emotion. We have to stay tethered to the principles of analysis. And what is the brain telling us? What is his brain telling us? It paints a vivid picture. And so we cannot interpret at this point in time what that please means. He didn't tell us.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide, and then Coop, weigh in. Actually, let's go to the next one too. So we've got "We Love You," and then "Your Girls Need You," and weigh in, Coop, kind of dovetail on what Steve was thinking based on his last comment as well.
Yeah, I certainly agree with Steve, and there's really he's addressing a generic "what if" kind of scenario, and going back to that last statement, there's not the possessive, the first person pronoun. He refers and makes this reference: we'll do whatever it takes. Whose we'll? Or is it he and the girls? Is it he and law enforcement? If it was law enforcement, we would see that law enforcement would be involved. So it's just a question. And going back, just to go back to the question that was presented by the viewer earlier, absolutely. You're absolutely right that we do take into account every possible emotion and every possible option that's available to us when we take a look at any investigation. And it's very important that we don't try to develop a theory that's based upon our beliefs, but rather based upon evidence.
And I think we're going to hear some more of that. Even I know, Mike over at PE is going to have Mark on tomorrow, and I know that Coop, you kind of brought Mark into the play. He was kind of the next generation after you guys, right? You and John and everybody. Yeah, so
right.
They're probably going to have the same assessment. That is going to be really interesting to see how that unfolds. Let's go to the next slide. I love this. This one is just the baffler for me. What do we got going on here? And Coop, I'll start with you on this one, and then Steve, if you could dovetail into what's going on here.
It's really an interesting statement. No questions asked. Well, of course, there are going to be questions asked. If Susan is responsible for her own disappearance, there's a lot of questions about that as to why. If not Susan and somebody else is responsible for it, well, there's a lot of questions with those individuals or that individual. And we have to look at this from all the possibilities, right, to begin with. And in a case like this, you look at the totality of the circumstances. You don't look at any one thing because there's no apparent smoking gun, so to speak, at least that's been revealed to the public. But when we take a look at the totality of things, it causes question, and we have to try to find answers to it. this no questions asked, is this directed at Susan? Is it directed at the everyone? Is it directed at one person? Or is it a suggestion, an implied desire and preference for oneself? When you make this statement, no questions asked, is that because there are questions there that I don't even want to be asked about? And the reason I throw that out there is only because he has made this statement on his own with no collusion with law enforcement. He has to stand on those statements, and he alone is responsible for this statement, and he alone is the only one that can interpret it for us.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, thanks. I agree with Coop as well, and I'm also going to back up just a little bit to where he said your girls need you. What that is implying is he's speaking directly to Suzanne there, and what that is implying is that Suzanne may have the ability to come home, and that since he directed it direct to her, your girls need you. And Coop mentioned he took himself out of it. He ejected himself from that. There's no personal pronoun I. He doesn't need her, it's the girls. Now, if the girls need her, he's saying, Suzanne, your girls need you. He's pleading for her, will you please come home? As if she's staying away on her own accord. So that is a subtle disparaging of the victim. And that's concerning. That's not what we expect. Now we come to this next section where he says, no questions asked. Well, that's on the heels of disparaging Suzanne, like, Suzanne, your girls need you. Why don't you come home? Come home. No questions asked. He's what he's doing. That's a good guy statement. He's building himself up. I'm such a good guy. I'm not going to ask any questions. And this is very typical. I'm getting really concerned now that this building himself up on the heels of subtle disparagement of Suzanne, that she's not coming home, that she might have the ability to, but she's not. And so it's a good guy statement, building himself up.
Okay, let's go to the next one. So we've got however much they want. Go ahead, Coop. Yeah.
I just want to go back to that comment about the girls need you without making the statement, I need you. That lack of personal pronoun. It suggests an emotional detachment, the possibility of one that we have to question and ask about, because he's the author. He's the author of the statement. He's the author of the intent, and he's trying to portray a message. Is he portraying the actual message, or is he portraying an intended message? So these are natural questions that when they're out there on their own doing this, they have to be responsible for it.
I've got a question for both of you. What do you think about the aspect of no questions asked, of him feeling that he's in a position to be able to even determine that it's almost a power position, that I can determine who can ask questions and who can't? Does that play into it at all, do you think? Or
yeah, I think that's a consideration. It's just another avenue to look into. Is this reflective of a personality type, and particularly not just a type, but of his personality? Is he reflecting in these statements? Is he reflecting personality characteristics of himself when he makes these statements? And of course he is. We all do. Anytime we open our mouths, we are always projecting who we are, what we believe, and the way in which we speak, whether it be non-verbally or verbally. It's an extension of our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And these are representative of a variety of thoughts, feelings, and emotions he must be going through, regardless of whether he's a suspect or not. He's never been identified as a suspect to our knowledge. He's never been referred to as a person of interest. So he has no reason from an official perspective, as far as law enforcement is concerned, to suggest that he's being accused of anything. They've never done that. If they intended on doing that, well, we would see some paperwork to suggest that.
Yeah, interesting. So what I'm going to do is combine the next couple of slides, however much they want. Do the next one, Dill. Honey, I love you. Next one. And then I want you back so bad. Steve, that's a lot there. What's going on? What do you think?
Well, when he says however much they want, and I will do whatever it takes. This is actually who is he speaking to? What's his priority here? That's our question. Well, is he speaking? It has to be either be Suzanne, the intended audience, or it's everyone else, the unintended audience. And however much they want, I will do whatever it takes to get you back. So that would be that he's directing this to Suzanne. So we expect the whole statement, this whole 25-second clip, to be congruent of him speaking to Suzanne. Well, is it a message then for Suzanne to pass along to her abductors as if she has that ability? That's what it sounds like. If that's the case, then that's kind of ridiculous. I mean, unless there's reason to believe that Suzanne just was fed up with them and left, which, I mean, I don't know if there's anything to suggest that. And I don't really have a lot of outside knowledge, and I don't want to have it. I just want to know what the words tell me. Just like Coop said, his words reflect all his thoughts and emotions and everything going on at that particular time. So I think what this is sounding like is his priority is to get this message out to his unintended audience, meaning law enforcement, the public, that he's the good guy. He's doing whatever it takes to get his wife back. And even though that is the message that he would like to get out there, his message has not been congruent. He had the opportunity when he said please to put that message out there to her abductors or maybe specifically to her, but he did not do that. And so we have issues now. And again, I see that there's problems. This last little statement right here, I want you back so bad. Well, the so bad is a qualifier. And if he's talking with Suzanne, Suzanne, I want you back. So bad is a convincing type of statement. And I know it's mild or it's subtle and I'm kind of picking at the little things here, but when they add in a qualifier like the so bad, it actually diminishes the importance of it a little bit, just a little bit. It's a subtle thing, but I don't expect him to diminish anything. I expect him to be boisterous and, a husband that's lost his wife. And I expect him just to be matter of fact that I'm going to find you, Suzanne, don't worry. And if anyone does have her, you better be taking care of her. And I'm going to do everything it takes to get you back. I'm working with law enforcement and everything that Coop was suggesting. I agree 100%.
Okay. And Coop, a couple thoughts on that one? You're muted again. Yeah, put your seatbelt on.
Thank you.
I love it.
I want you back so bad. I agree. Steve is referring to the qualifier. Isn't that kind of an understatement? I want you back so bad, so bad. It just it gives a different impression about the intensity of how bad he wants her back. The way in which it's said, and again, one has to look at his jargon, the way in which he speaks, and the vocabulary that he uses, typically. But as a qualifier, you don't need to have a qualifier as so bad. I want you back. Certainly that applies. And he also makes a statement that I love you. And I, no doubt in my mind, that he does love Susan. And he's been married to her for around 26 years. He has 2 children with her. They've been through a lot together. And that's probably a very factual and true statement. And I'm sure he does want her back as well.
Yep.
Most likely. And is that to the degree to which he feels that emotion, that's up for debate.
Don't you guys think too that both following the plea statement and here, if you were going to put a qualifier, it would be focused on "I want you bad, safe," or "I want you back healthy," or "I want you back alive," or if you're going to put something there. I mean, even when he talks earlier about "we're going to get you back," there's no focus on the condition in which she's with on either one of the 2 statements.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. There needs to be something, and it is significantly missing from, and it's very concerning that is missing. And so we come back around now to asking ourselves, what is the priority of this video that he put out? What's the priority of his statement? Is he actually addressing Suzanne? Or is he making a statement to the public? And since we're missing those things, those specific things that you were talking about, Dean, it sounds more to me like he is making a statement to the public and not actually to Suzanne. And I say the public, that includes law enforcement, the criminal investigators. What do you think, Coop?
Absolutely. I think that the audience has to cover not just the general public, but particularly law enforcement, because of his concern by his own statements that law enforcement looked to him as a suspect in this case. He made that statement. We've not heard that come out of law enforcement at this point. He's been very critical of law enforcement from the early stages. Why? We don't know why. Only from what he has stated.
That's a great segue, Coop. So let's do this, guys. We're just getting started. We've got a lot more coming on here. Trust me. I mean, as you can see, we've got an amazing panel here. These are world-renowned experts: Greg Cooper, Steve Johnson, and Dean Jackson. And so let's do this. On that segment right there, let's take about 3 or 4 questions, okay, while we tee up the next segment coming in. Keep up the amazing content. Thank you. And by the way, thank you so much for your donations tonight. What we're going to do is take your names, and we're creating a whole, I haven't named it yet, but we're going to recognize your support for helping us and bringing, great content to you into the YouTube community. So let's take a couple of questions. Dylan, if something comes up, I'll put those up here, and let's see here. If we've got any, do you think Barry is guilty? Well, at this point, I'm going to answer that one. At this point, it's anybody's guess. Law enforcement has a lot of resources and tools, and so that's up to them to determine that in a court of law. That's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is just report it as he puts it out to the public, and that's what we're doing. Why did he search day in or day off? Why didn't he search Stacey Shea in his day off if he cared? That's a great question. He didn't participate in any of the searches, guys. I don't know if you guys were aware of that, but he was there. He was there. He drove around with his Bobcat attached to his truck the whole time while Suzanne's brother was in town. So what's the next question? My flock. Thank you so much. Thank you. We love you. Next question. Mary, what are you bugging? Don't you love these names? These names are, Steve, this would drive you crazy in the classroom, in an education setting. Please, when are they going to arrest this guy? What's up with the sheriff's office? Great question. It goes back to the guilty question. That's up to them. What do we got next? Mary, thank you. Muddy Bottom Adventures, how much substantial evidence has been collected, and where will it lead? We don't know. We do not know at this point. The DA will make that determination, but thank you for that question. Last question. Teresa Fountain, question. Would Barry take Suzanne to Indiana to hide her if farm ground is good up there? You guys are, I love you. Would he take her to, what Coop, from a profiling perspective, would that be a place that, if from a geo profile, would that be something entertaining to a suspect?
It'd be interesting to talk with some of our experts on the Cold Case Foundation, expert investigative researchers that we have, and investigators rather. And we have a couple of geo profilers. Really be interesting to see after they've looked at all the information, all the different locations, and the reference and context of those locations before, during, and subsequent to the crime. What opinions they would have on that. Certainly it's possible, very possible. But for the timeline, it doesn't appear that the timeline would allow him to remove, under circumstances like this, rely on offender, in this case, guessing, to move the victim that far, because the accountability is there in terms of his presence. And we know that he was there locally. He was there in the home just prior to her disappearance, just after her disappearance. So the question would be when and how could that have happened? It doesn't appear that logistically that would have been a very realistic possibility.
I think too, Chris, one of the things that people have to keep in mind is that, on one hand, when we're looking at the timelines and we're trying to do that, part of what we do at the foundation is we look at what's possible versus probable. And the timeline oftentimes will begin to tie those things in. And I think back to the question about, why law enforcement isn't doing whatever. And I get that a lot from families who will contact us with cases. And, one of the things I'm constantly reminding them of is that, if you look at this process, I mean, the first question is we're trying to figure out who did it. That's what everybody wants to know. And you go through a process to get there. But I think secondly, there has to be enough, no matter who did it, to be able to make an arrest that's going to actually stick. And then to be able to have enough evidence to be able to carry that through the court system and get a conviction. And so, a lot of times people get frustrated because of how much time it takes, but law enforcement is dealing with so many other dynamics in the process. So whoever, the people of interest are, they may be a person of interest. And, I always remind people as well, we'll have cases where we may have 5, 6, 7 people of interest. We want to look at all of them equally. But at the end of the day, you have to also keep in mind that once somebody is convicted and that person of interest is convicted, you may have 5 or 6 other people that weren't. And, there's just circumstantial or certain reasons that they were initially looked at. So it's all part of the larger process. So I think, looking at it, going after law enforcement at this stage of the game really is, I think, extremely premature. Understanding the timeline of this case, as well as not knowing, and of course we're hampered by the fact that we don't know all of the details. We don't see everything that they see, and oftentimes we've looked at cases that have been brought to us, family or whatever, have brought a case, and the public said that when we finally get a look at the case itself, it's a whole different perspective.
Yeah, good point. Solid point. Absolutely. So we've got this one question, and then I want to get into the next statements. Question: does Barry feel a bit arrogant and confident because he feels we'll never find her, in your opinion? Who wants to take that? Coop, Steve, you guys want to weigh in?
Well, I think the fact that she's not been found yet builds the confidence of whomever is responsible for her absence. And anyone who attempts to influence the audience as to certain scenarios of possibilities with regard to her disappearance, and then see that for whatever reason there's been a failure to discover and her remains. I think we can make a pretty safe presumption at this point that most likely we are attempting to discover her rather than to find her healthy. And so that's the challenge. And I think anybody who's responsible under those set of circumstances is going to increase in confidence and potentially arrogance.
Okay, so let's, Dylan, let's go to the next clips that we have here. And thank you, Ronnie, for that super sticker. Very grateful for that. And Paula, new sub, thank you very much. Welcome to the community. We're grateful that you're here. Any plans on discussing the CW case at a later date? Not right now. I think that thing's been beat to death. But there are some other things that we certainly would be interested in getting into, and we'll talk about that at a later date. So, Dylan, and Steve, you kind of take the lead here for us on where you want to start, okay, and tell us what you're seeing and what you're thinking, and then Coop, Dean, we can all kind of tie into this as Steve kind of drives it.
All right.
Mary, Suzanne is not at the house. Her car's here, but her bike's missing. And I said, that doesn't sound good, but she's not answering me either. I'm coming home right now. And that was at 5 o'clock Sunday evening. Suzanne went on a bike ride every day, Lauren. She was an avid biker. If
Let's
she did
stop
not
there. So what he said in the very beginning, I have it written down here. He said, and she said, Barry, Suzanne is not at the house. Her car's here, but her bike is missing. Barry is giving us a recount of what he's alleging the neighbor told him on the phone when he called to have her go over and check. Now, we don't know exactly what he said to the neighbor. That's missing. But the word that I'm keying in on here is the missing. Her car's here, but her bike is missing. If Barry sent her over to see if Suzanne was at the house, the bike can only be missing if the neighbor knows that it's supposed to be there. So, and what Barry's telling us is that the bike was missing, knowing that the bike's supposed to be there, but it's not. And it's as if, if your vehicle or home was burglarized, you would get in there and you would look for everything that was supposed to be there, and what's not is missing. And so he didn't say the bike is gone. He said the bike is missing. And there's a difference there between gone and missing.
Interesting. Very interesting. Coop?
Yeah. Now, my understanding is that particular bicycle had been purchased by Barry within a couple of weeks. Is that correct? A couple of weeks of this event?
There is information about that. Yes, that's possible. Correct.
Okay. And that my additional understanding is that there is another bicycle that belonged to Susan that was much more expensive than the bike that we're referring to now, and one that she used typically, correct?
Yes.
Well, this is an interesting observation. Then the bike that's missing is the least expensive. If she's an avid bike rider, which she makes reference to her as being, then one would expect that she would be using that bike that she typically uses day in and day out, the expensive bike. And I think the explanation was given that he purchased this other bike for bike parts or something. But that's the bike that's missing. And that's a principle that, from our perspective, that we look at and wonder, ask the question of proprietary interest. The $4,000 bike compared to the $100 bike, or I don't know how much it was that he had purchased. But why would she be going out on the cheap bike if typically she's out on her expensive bike that she uses typically?
Okay, Steve, where are we going?
Great point. That reminds me of some of the arson investigations that we took part in. You look for what valuable property was still in the house when it went up in flames, or was there valuable property that was removed just prior to the flames occurring, and that's a key here. And I think this is kind of the same scenario as that. So that's a really good point. That adds a whole new dynamic to that statement, and it adds a dynamic to what he said next, because in the next little bit there, he said, he's telling this reporter, Lauren, he says, Suzanne went on a bike ride every day, Lauren. She was an avid biker. If she did not bike around the subdivision, she biked on trails. And so what he's doing there is he is really convincing the reporter that Suzanne was a biker. He's making sure there is no doubt that she knows that Suzanne went biking every day. And I think that is very key here. And it's really, really key, knowing what Coop just said, that this bike that was the one that went missing was the cheaper bike. And so, man, that adds a whole new dynamic to it. And I'll just add one more thing here. He said, just following that, he said, I don't remember how the conversation went, but I probably said something like, is her bike there? Because her car was there and she's gone. And she's gone is a very definitive statement. She's gone. He didn't say she wasn't there.
She didn't say she was missing.
Yeah, that's different than she's gone. Gone is very definitive, and I cannot let go of that. It's for me, it's key.
Okay, let's keep moving.
I was going to just ask one other question about the bike. So what wasn't, and maybe I'm confused, but it seemed like one of the reasons for the bike was for parts, correct? Or
right now we don't know. We don't know the totality of that. No,
okay.
There is some information that's out there, but I don't know personally the totality of what exactly that meant.
It just seems like I was just thinking from a behavioral standpoint. I'm not a bike guy, so but I can't imagine. I'm into motorbikes, and I can't imagine buying a much cheaper motorbike for parts for my more expensive motorbike. I mean, so that seems to me to be a little bit interesting as well. So,
I agree 100%. 100%. So, Steve, keep us moving.
Around the subdivision, she biked on trails. I don't remember how the conversation went, but I probably said something like, is her bike there? Because her car was there and she's gone. I rushed home, left all my tools at the hotel, called my work.
No, keep going. I'll stop you in just a second.
I've got a family emergency. You're going to have to figure this out on your own, and went directly to the site where the bike was. I know.
Okay, right there. All right. This for me is a key statement. He said, I rushed home. So he's just been told that his wife is missing. They found her bike, or they found her bike, and I don't know if that he called the neighbor right before that, but he says, I rushed home. That's good. I rushed home, and I want to believe that, and everything he says after that should correspond with that without convincing me. Because if you have a family emergency, you're called at work, and somebody says to you, Chris, your wife is in the hospital.
Yeah, I'm
You
going.
don't even have to ask. You're going to rush home.
Right.
Done deal. Yeah.
But
So
what does he do?
what he says after that is left. Notice that he drops the pronoun I. Very key. Left all my tools at the hotel. Called my workers and said, and again, he drops the pronoun. I called my worker. He didn't say that. Called my workers and said, I've got a family emergency. You're going to have to figure this out on your own. What's the purpose of that whole statement? There really is none. That's a convincing statement. If you don't believe me that I rushed home, here's what I did. And it's to convince us that he really did rush home, that he was so concerned that he rushed. And so he may have rushed home, but why do you have to convince me that you did that? I would believe you from the beginning. And so this is concerning. what's more concerning, once you start understanding the significance of what Coop and I have been saying about the personal pronouns, he dropped those pronouns. Left on my tools, we didn't say I. Call my workers, he didn't say I. Went directly to the site where the bike was, dropped the pronoun I. He ejected himself psychologically from the commitment to that statement. And so I naturally wonder, did you rush home, or was there something else going on? Why did you have to convince me? Yet in your convincing statement, you weren't even committed to it because you didn't use the personal pronoun I. So that's really a big deal. We've been using pronouns since before we could even talk, and motioning the pronouns I, mine, and as such, we've used them thousands and thousands. We use them thousands of times a day, and they take no thought. They just come out. And so when we see that they are dropped, that's what takes the cognitive effort to drop the pronoun. Not using them, that's easy. Dropping them is what takes more effort. And when he drops them, it's very indicative that he's distancing himself from the commitment to that statement right there.
Interesting. Fascinating. Cool.
And there's much more to that part right there too. I just kind of paused. If Coop, you had anything you wanted to throw in there on that?
I just wanted to clarify that typically when we make statements that are believable, we back them up with actions. I recall raising my kids. I've seen my kids 1,000 times when they're little telling me they were sorry for things. But what I believed was not what they were telling me. What I believed was what they were doing, right? And so the question, going back to Steve's observation in terms of the timeline too, he makes the statement early on, or we find out early on that he was contacted early in the day that his wife was missing. And it's not until, is it 5:30 in the evening? Does he make reference to that? 5:30 in the evening that he finally gets back?
Yeah, there's a couple different statements floating, but yeah, in some of these we hear around the 5 o'clock time frame. Yeah.
Okay, so he's known all day long that she's been missing, but does he rush back? It's taken him all day.
Yeah. And can I add something else to this? Note the sequence of events that he listed here. He says, I rushed home. Well, then he went back in time in his sequence. It's out of chronological order. Left all my tools at the hotel, and now he tells us everything that he told his workers and what he did before he rushed home. And here's what we've found looking at thousands of statements is that truthful people recite what happened in chronological order. When something happens and we tell a truthful statement, or we experience something, I should say, we have all this experiential, our sights, our sounds, what we hear and smell and feel and emotion, it all comes into play, and neurons connect in our brain. And so recounting that event is very simple, and it takes no thought because it's what happened. And we have all those sensory things going on around us that we experience that play into recounting. And I look at this and I wonder, okay, in the scenario, Chris, that I said to you, I said, if someone called you at work and said, hey, your wife's in the hospital, she's been in an accident, immediately, what are you going to feel?
Yeah, I'm on my way. Yeah.
And you're going to feel all this emotion for your wife.
Yeah. Right.
Are you going to have any concern for yourself?
My sweetheart.
You won't have any concern for yourself. It is for your sweetheart, for your loved one. And so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, wow, if I got that phone call, I would be my emotion for my wife would be off the charts. Where's the emotion in that statement for his wife? It's not there. It's all for him. It's all for his own welfare. What he did, it's a convincing statement of that he actually acted, but it's void of emotion for his wife. And I'm telling you, that's not a good sign. It's not looking good.
So let's keep moving. We've got a lot still to go here. This is a great, great, great conversation. Guys, thank you so much for being here. If you're not a subscriber of this channel, please consider hitting that button. What do we got next, Steve?
Know for a fact that the sheriffs are embarrassed in how they handled the investigation, and they just want to crawl under a rock about it. So maybe that's why. I have no idea. The sheriff has a lot of explaining to do on what they're doing now, what they did then. I have been searching for trails after trails on that dirt bike.
Let's stop right there. Just real quick, this just go back to Coops, and Coop probably has better explanation on this than me, but what he's doing here is he's disparaging the the entity that is actually searching for his wife, that has the ability to do the search and rescue and do the investigation and find his wife, and if there was foul play, to bring whoever is responsible out there, whoever's out there that has her, bring them to justice, and he's disparaging them. And so that's just a little bit concerning for me right there.
Yeah. The very entity that's responsible to clear his name is the one that's being criticized now. And you've got a good offense is better than a good defense, right? And so we often see that in people's behavior. And when he starts redirecting, if you will, the responsibility, he's redirecting the responsibility of himself and the predicament that he's in to the police, saying basically it's their fault why I'm being looked at. It's their fault why they suspect me.
Interesting.
No.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that is so typical. I'm sure every one of you on this panel have experienced being in an interview room with a suspect that is de facto guilty. You have all the evidence, you know it, and yet what does he do? Who does he blame? He blames you, the cops, the investigator, for him being in that predicament that he's in, not himself. And this is kind of the same mentality as that.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're going to believe me or your lying eyes, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dean and I are like two flies on the wall listening to you guys. I absolutely love this. Let's keep moving. Steve, what do we got?
I'm in the dark here. I don't know what they're investigating, who they're investigating. I know they're investigating me because they've destroyed my family and my life.
The vigil is September 25th for your wife.
Okay.
Will you be there?
Absolutely. Everybody's out there saying, "Oh."
Okay, let's stop there for a minute. We know that's not true. We know that's not true. So let's keep moving. Sorry, Steve. I had to take that one.
Yeah.
Next.
Another love in my life since 1988. She's a mess head too, just like Jeff. She is mad at me because I fired her.
What I missed that part. What just before he says
he's talking about Morgan Gentile and a conversation that the reporter had with her. That's who he's throwing her under the bus as being a meth head, like Jeff Puckett, the other employee.
Okay.
Yeah, that's his statement there.
And don't let her work for me anymore. He's mad. So they're not going to say anything good about me. I am innocent, 100% innocent. And the social media and the news media has made it seem like I'm a bad guy.
Let's stop. Okay. Interesting, because what he's doing is he's talking about Jeff Puckett and this other former employee of his. This was Barry's prime opportunity to make a reliable denial about him being involved in anything foul with his wife, her disappearance in any way. And he didn't do it. What he did instead is he attacked those that were making implications, allegations against him. He attacked the messenger. And what he had the opportunity to do is say, I didn't kill my wife. I didn't have anything to do with her disappearance. Something to that effect. It was his opportunity and he didn't do it. Instead, he attacked the messenger. And this is very, very typical. just because someone, I should point out that just because someone doesn't make a reliable denial mean that they are de facto guilty. However, what we have found is that in every deceptive case where we have some type of a denial, they all make unreliable denials. They all make like this, or they fail to make those denials, and that's kind of the same thing we have going on here. It's very typical, so even more concerning.
He also basically has presented himself as a victim. No longer is it about Susan, it's about him, and how everybody, the law enforcement, as well as his associates, those who have worked with him, have victimized him by making these claims about him. Now, keep in mind, he makes reference to some of their background and their characterization of some of them. So therefore, you shouldn't believe them because of their background. Well, he's the one that hired them. They must have been good enough to hire to begin with. So there was something within their character that he thought was sufficient for him to trust them to do the work that he hired them to do. But now all of a sudden, when he becomes potentially a focus of interest, now all of a sudden he's a victim, and nobody that's looking at him as a person of interest anyway, or with any eye of suspicion, should be believed because they don't have credibility.
You know, that is a really interesting point that you just made, Coop and Steve, is the fact that he's got to take some responsibility and reflective behavior there, right? I mean, to your point, he hires the two people that he just threw under the bus as being, drug addicts.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's a fascinating point. Fascinating. I missed that big time. Steve, what else we got?
Let's keep going.
Jeff Puckett was in prison for 9 years. I said, listen, I need to do this job. I will pay you good money to come help me. I gave him a job and an opportunity. They all jumped on it. That had nothing to do with Suzanne missing. I didn't do nothing wrong.
Let's stop. Okay, kind of the same thing here. We have just a continuation of this. He says, this is what Coop was referring to. He more disparaging of Jeff Puckett, that he was in prison for 9 years. So what does that say? You shouldn't believe him because he was in prison for 9 years. Well, my question is, Barry, if you didn't have anything to do with Suzanne's disappearance, why would you care? Why are you now on the defensive here? He really shouldn't be. It's not. It doesn't work. If he was de facto innocent, didn't have anything to do with it, he shouldn't be disparaging Jeff Puckett. And along those lines, he said, listen, I need to do this job. I will pay you good money to come and help me. I gave him a job and an opportunity, and they all jumped on it. Couple things there. Number one, again, Barry is building himself up to be the good guy. Okay. This is all about Barry, and who has the need to build himself up? Well, it's people that know in the back of their mind that they've maybe have done something that they need to rehab themselves to the public, whoever's listening. That's one point. Number two, he says, I gave him a job and an opportunity, and he says, and they all jumped on it. Well, I thought he was talking about Jeff Puckett. Now he's introduced more than one person, and it's a minor point, but I wonder now if, because he says they, if there's more than one person involved in this, if maybe there was help, assuming that the way that it's sounding here is that Barry's on the defensive, Barry's got some deceptive answers. And if Barry has something to do with this, which I'm starting to believe now, that there might be more than one person involved in it.
Interesting. Cool.
He also makes reference to the point that he is innocent. I think he said 100% innocent, but never makes a blatant denial of, I had nothing to do with this disappearance. I had nothing to do with the disappearance of my wife. He just makes this detached term of I am innocent. Well, innocent of what? What are you innocent of? He never qualifies what he's referring to as well. So he never really addresses that. And I think, to me, that's significant, and it's evasive.
What do you guys think about the fact that after he says all these things that really are unrelated to where he's trying to protect himself, almost is what we're coming to the conclusion here on, where then he himself says this has nothing to do with her missing? It's almost like that last statement as he's bringing it to a close. He's saying, he's almost admitting that it doesn't have, what I've just talked about really has nothing to do with what we should be talking about. Does that fit in there at all, do you think, Steve or Greg?
To me, it goes back to he's the victim.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with her missing. This has to do with me and what it's done to me in my life.
Yeah, I agree. It's all about Barry. It's not about Suzanne. The focus has gone to Barry. And that's kind of what we're seeing overall here. As we take the totality of this, we're seeing more focus on Barry than our victim, Suzanne, his beloved wife, who he says that he loves. So it's concerning.
Yeah, keep going, man. We're cooking. This is awesome.
There's
What we
cameras
got?
in this place. I did nothing wrong. I did not go to the pool, and I did not get chlorine. I'm sure that they washed.
That's a truthful statement. I did not go to the pool, and I did not get chlorine. This is the first thing that I've heard that I can say for sure that I believe Barry. Barry is telling the truth there. He did not go to the pool, and he did not get I did not get chlorine. Now, there's a lot of things that Barry didn't say there, but that part right there is a truthful statement. And it goes back to that pronoun I. I did not, and past tense, did not or didn't, and what the specific action was. I did not go to the pool. I did not get chlorine. Perfect. And that's what I expect when I say that Barry had the opportunity to issue a reliable denial. When Coop just mentioned that Barry said, I'm innocent, I'm 100% innocent. Everybody's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. That's where I wanted to hear him say, I did not cause my wife's disappearance or something like that. But anyway, that was a truthful statement right there.
Interesting.
Wash the rooms with that for the COVID. I don't know. I smelled it too when I was in there. I've heard the FBI lie. And I know they can legally do that in their investigations, but it just pains me.
Stop.
Mm-hmm.
Coop.
I think he's checked it off, hasn't he? He's checked off everybody who's victimized him now. He's checked off his associates. He's checked off the local police. He's checked off the media. He's checked off the FBI now. So
and us.
Nobody should believe any of those. Again, don't believe me, not your lying eyes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wasn't going to let that one get past my brother down there, Steve. You know how we are.
You got to. Yeah, absolutely.
And I know they can legally do that in their investigations, but it just pains me to know that they are doing this to me and my family.
Stop. Another that would, to most people, this would seem like a very small point, but in the context of an investigation that has been going on for months, and his no word from his wife, and there's speculation that the worst has happened. I don't know if it's how the investigation is focused at this point, but it's not looking good. And he used the word pains. It just pains me. Now, a couple things. The word pain, it's an interesting choice of words in the context of this type of investigation. Our minds will reach out when we're going to put a statement together. We'll reach out into our 25,000 word dictionary that we have in our minds, and it will pick out words that fit, and they typically fit the mold for several different things that are going in our brains all at the same time. And the word pain is significant. And it just, when I hear things like that in the context of this type of investigation, it really piques my interest that there might have been pain involved in this. The second thing with that is that he focused that pain. He says, it just pains me to know. And I think Coop, you hit on this a little bit as well. He's focused this to what he's feeling. Again, not Suzanne. And it's coming back. It's more and more. It's all about me, self-preservation. Why do you need to preserve yourself? The devil's advocate here is that, well, Barry's he knows he's being investigated, although there's no charges filed or anything like that. He knows that people are in the media, like this show, are pointing out some things that aren't so good, not looking so good for Barry. I get that, but there's all kinds of other words that he could choose, and there's all kinds of he could change the focus, but he didn't. I still expect the focus to be on Suzanne and her welfare. That's what happens when people are de facto innocent. They did not have anything to do with it. The focus will be on getting their loved one home, and that's not Barry's focus.
Greg?
I agree. There's nothing really to add to that.
Okay.
I think it's right on target.
Okay, next.
On record, Barry, right now, if people think that you did it, what would you tell them?
Absolutely not. I love my wife. I would never hurt my wife. She is the light of my and my daughter's lives.
I'm really just trying to help Suzanne.
Hold on. Time out. Okay, let's go back to this. Lauren, the reporter, said, put it on record, Barry, right now. If people think you did it, what would you tell them? That question, the context of it is that somebody did it. Something did something to Suzanne. Barry just accepted it. It was comfortable to him. There was no pause or hesitation in accepting that. And it tells me in Barry's mind, something happened to Suzanne that wasn't good. And it was someone that did it, not a lion or anything like that. It was someone did it. And she's saying, you did it. So I expect now a reliable denial from Barry. And what he says is absolutely not. I'm telling you, that's not a reliable denial. Reliable denial is I didn't have anything to do with her disappearance. But he says absolutely not. That's just hanging out there. There's no connection, no commitment to that. He said, now this is convincing. I love my wife. I would never hurt my wife. That's a convincing statement. I'm sure he loves her, but it's convincing that for us to believe that he didn't do anything to his wife. He said, I would never hurt my wife. Well, that's would never. If you think about it, that's future tense conditional. That's the norm. I would never. If she was here, I would never hurt her. It's not something from the past. That what would you say to people that think you did it? You don't have to convince us. Just say I didn't do it. I didn't have anything to do with it. That's all you have to say. And that's like, oh, okay. I would probably believe that if I didn't have anything else to go along with it. But he didn't say that.
So let's listen to that again. Dylan. This is. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
They are doing this to me and my family.
Put it on record, Barry, right now. If people think that you did it, what would you tell them?
Absolutely not. I love my wife. I would never hurt my wife. She is the light of my and my daughter's lives.
Cool.
When he qualifies that, first he says absolutely not, which I think Steve's already addressed. Then he says, I love my wife. Well, think for a moment of all homicides that have been committed, particularly domestic related homicides. where the individual responsible for it, there was never any question that love had anything to do with it. They most likely did love, and in many cases, in our own career, how many times have you been on a domestic violence situation where there was no question that the individual loved the victim, and that is not a denial. He's attempting to use that as a reason why he wouldn't. Well, love has never been a reason why someone would not commit violence against another human being. In fact, love is often a reason why they do.
Yeah,
because they can't control the temper associated with it.
Yeah, heat of passion, right?
Yeah.
We all know what that looks like. And so the last piece of this still, and let me just kind of set this up for a minute. So I made a phone call to Barry, as you guys know, and the thought process there was to, I didn't want to identify myself as, a former homicide guy, or anything like that, right? I just wanted to kind of lay it out there as a guy named Chris calling him, whether or not he knew or didn't know. I mean, you guys know the play, okay? And then I asked him for, what his thought was if I could help, and just kind of, get what his response was. And he said he couldn't trust anybody, and ultimately, as you know, he hung up. So go ahead and play that, Dill. I'm really just trying to help Suzanne.
Yeah, I wish I could trust you, but I'm sorry, I just can't.
What would it take for you to trust me? So the big picture there is help Suzanne. What do you got, Steve?
Well,
it's the old homicide guy, bud.
Yeah. So again, Barry did not focus. His focus was not on Suzanne. It was on himself. It was, even though you told him that you wanted to help him help Suzanne, he says, yeah, I just can't trust anyone out there. And, that's kind of like the whole world is against me. I'm the victim. Everybody has made me. You all have made me a victim, and I'm got that victim mentality, and it's me, myself, and I, not Suzanne, and so I don't like it.
Cool. Any other thoughts? Because I know you weighed in on that video about trust, and so did Dean.
Yeah, he's just taken a very long approach of identifying scenarios outside of the realm of a domestic situation and casting blame on other entities and people who are responsible for the very position he's put himself in through both what he has said and what he's done.
Awesome. Okay, so guys, we're not done. We're going to take some questions now, some Q&A. But I do want to tell you a couple of things. Steve, do you have any books? Have you written books? I know you've been training forever, but do you have a book out there?
I wish I did. I'm in the process of writing a book as we speak, and so I don't know when it'll be done, but I'm in the process of it.
Okay,
I do teach a lot of classes, and so I have a new online class available. Mostly my classes are geared towards law enforcement, but and they're 3-day classes, and we tailor them. If anyone's interested in those classes, you can get a hold of me on my website. It's in in the links here.
It's down below.
Yeah, thank you for that. I even with COVID, we're traveling and doing in classes, but more importantly, we've got an online class. We've filmed the whole thing. In fact, the class that Dean attended, we filmed that whole thing, and we've also done some more here in studio in the home, and so we've got these online classes that we're launching. So you can get to my website and you can contact me if you're interested in those classes, and we can hook you up with those.
Great.
And I'll just jump in and tell you. Well, I was
Go
just
ahead.
going to jump in and say on Steve, I have attended his training. He's a great instructor, did a phenomenal job. And I think it's one of those kind of trainings where you start out, you kind of going, how in the world do you get there? But he systematically walks you through it, and it's phenomenal to be able to walk through and look at those cases that way. So, yeah, I actually wrote a book a few years ago. My book is actually designed specifically for first responders or people that find themselves in a position needing to make death notifications. It's one of the things that I've not only done hundreds of, but I've also worked with law enforcement and trained them as well in it. So yeah, that's available as well. They can just come out and ask for it at our website. So.
Isn't this great that you and I tonight, Dean, were the two quiet ones?
Oh.
You know, these two guys on that side over there. This is great. And Coop, I know you've got all kinds of books. You've got Predators. You've written, VICAP stuff. You even did the training manual for law enforcement on sexual with John Douglas, and who else was involved?
I was really fortunate to participate as a contributing author to the FBI's crime classification manual.
Yep.
Where we classified over 400 different classifications of homicide, sexual assault, and arson and bombing. It's written after the same manner the DSM, I guess DSM-5, or I think they're working on the DSM, Diagnostical Statistical Manual, for the psychiatrists and psychologists.
Yep.
Then, of course, Predators, the co-authored Predators, who they are and how to stop them. Take a number of cases and look at a crime from the perspective of the investigator, the offender, investigator / profiler, the offender, and the victim, to understand all those viewpoints, and then lessons learned at one of those chapters. So it's not only, it's more edutainment, it's educational with some entertainment, so to speak, as a true crime, because they're all true crimes and cases that we've worked. And then Who Killed King Tut is one that goes way back. Another co-authored that as well. And Mike King and I co-authored that together, and along with Don DeNevy, who participated in writing it. And that was an interesting biographical, historical.
Oldest case in history. Oldest case in history.
It's the oldest, coldest, and oldest case in history that, as far as we're concerned, we solved it. And until they come up with more evidence, we're going to stick to it.
Awesome.
But it was a lot of fun. We had a blast.
Now, you weren't there when it actually happened, right, Greg? This was looking good.
Hey, and let's talk about real fast, and let's take some questions, because I don't want to, we want to keep everybody, their thought processes are going here. You got in the Cold Case Foundation, everybody, if you didn't get a chance last week, go down on the link below. You can go over there. This is a 501c3. They are a combination of experts from all around the world. Steve is a perfect example of that. And what they do is they solve crimes, or they help solve cold cases for agencies and families that don't have the resources to do it. It is a 501c3. Your donations are important. We've got almost 1,400 people, and this is going to just keep going. If you get a chance, go over to Cold Case, Foundation, their website over there. It's below. Sign up for $2.99 a month. You can also get podcasts. What else you guys got over there?
So we have an academy that's set up for the general public. There's blogs, there's articles, just some great things. So
great things. So
that's $2.99 a month, right?
Yeah, $2.99.
Why don't you just round it up to $3?
We wanted to give you a good deal.
What is it with a penny, you guys?
That was my question. They told me that's the best way to go.
Okay. So, Dill, let's put some questions up here. Why did BM stop people from searching for Suzanne? So that's kind of a behavioral question. So, Coop, let's start with you on that one. Why do you think somebody would do that?
Well, eventually, one gets beyond the point where it's doing them any good when they know what the outcome is, from my estimation. And typically, people participate in those activities where they believe that there are going to be positive results from it, and regardless of what it is. And so in this situation, if that expectation dwindles and is removed or implodes, or the individual already knows what their end result is, there's no point to continue to participate in it.
Okay, so next question, Lego one. I need this one answered. Do you think she may have gone missing before Mother's Day, and he reported her the day for reasons like their daughter's asking, that kind of stuff, right? Think like the West parallel. So, you guys familiar with the California case out there with the two little boys out there that are missing? There's really not a parallel in this particular situation, and so yeah, could he have sent the girls off? Yeah, anything is possible there, 100%.
Well, I could say in relationship to cases we have looked at that you're always looking at the timeline and also who's creating the timeline, right? So part of that is what we would do is go back and look at when was the last time she was actually seen, who was the last person to have seen her, where were those, and then you begin to create that possibility within that. If there's question about the person who is helping to create the timeline being potentially a person of interest, then you have to say, well, maybe they weren't seen at that particular time. Maybe it was much earlier. So you're looking at all of those dynamics. So everything has to be considered.
Awesome. What else we got? Lori Beth, and thank you for that question, Grandma. Where were they not spotted in town the day or the day before? There's been a couple of things floating around that they were, seen having dinner one night early in the week. So yes, that is a possibility, but law enforcement has not confirmed that I'm aware of. Gigi Burns, does shaking his head no give you any clue, Steve?
Well, that goes, yes. The short answer is yes. People don't realize, as you guys know, sitting in an interview room, oftentimes they will, when people are telling us one thing, but they're thinking another, they're nodding their head, shaking their head no or yes will indicate that they're really thinking the opposite of what's coming out of their mouth. And the really neat thing about what I do with the linguistics is we can use that in conjunction with that body language, and it's solid. It's a done deal. There's no guesswork whatsoever.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Will this case ever be resolved? Dean.
I think there's a high probability that it can be resolved. I really do. I think there's a lot of work that can be done. I think, sitting down with law enforcement, the people that are actually looking at it, my guess is whatever the public has got access to. I've never seen a case that we've ever received that when we get to look behind the curtain, as you were, and see what they have, there's always a lot more there than the public ever gains access to until it goes to trial. So I would be hopeful.
Okay. Deborah Haig asked, why would Barry describe her as she was an avid biker? Steve?
Yeah, I'd love to take that. That is a great question. And I'm really glad that question came up because I skipped over it. He referred to his wife in the past tense. And thank you for that question. That is very significant. That means that he has processed that she is either not coming back or she's not capable of coming back. And my word, when they refer to their loved one in the past tense, it's very, very telling. And so thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, that's really a statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Dovetail into that.
Yeah. It's a statement that she's no longer an avid bike rider.
Yeah.
She was, and was is past, it's history, no longer.
Yeah, interesting. Great question. So Martin Smallwood, why did Chris Watts and Barry use the exact same words on their video? I want her back so bad. I want you back so bad. Steve?
Well, there you go. We just ran a parallel to Chris Watts, so that's not looking real good. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier, that it's a qualifier. He had, to say, I want you back, and I'm gonna do everything it takes to get you back. That's solid. when you have the need to qualify it, though, it weakens it. And obviously, Chris Watts had the need to qualify because he knew that there wasn't going to be a good outcome, and so he attempted to say what sounded good, and it actually was not. And we know the outcome of that. His wife and kids were deceased, and he killed them. Barry, we can't say that about Barry, but what we can say is that qualifier it weakens that statement. It takes the commitment out of it, and it's actually worse for Barry. It would have been better if he hadn't used that qualifier.
It also makes one wonder whether or not Barry watched Chris Watts say that previously and recalled that as a script for his video.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I talked to some folks who were very close to him since childhood, who told me he listens to true crime podcasts, murder mysteries specifically, on his journeys while going to hunt. Yeah. And in fact, that's all he listens to, according to this individual who went to kindergarten with him. He's known him his whole life. Yeah. So that was an interesting correlation to what you just said, Coop. That made me think of that statement when you said that. 7, what is Barry's most concerning statement? That is a great one. So Coop, let's start with you. What do you think so far, what you've heard? And then Steve, kind of qualify it. And Dean, you can kind of jump in here to what you think.
I go back to what I think I said earlier, and that is it's a totality of things. It's not any one thing. Even with respect to the statements, it's not any one statement he makes. It's several statements that he makes. The reference to her in past tense, the lack of personal attachment and pronoun, the lack of apparent emotion. There's a detached approach to this. The lack of personal projection into the loss of his wife of 26 years and an expression of that. The lack of consistencies. And so I think the conglomerate creates the concern. It's not any one thing.
Yeah, I agree. We can't hang our hat on any one thing. It has to be a totality. When we're looking for truth versus deception in a statement, we have to be convinced of it, and that keeps us safe. We don't want to come out and say, "Oh, we think that Barry's not telling us the truth," based on just one thing. That doesn't work. There has to be a totality, and that's kind of what we're seeing here, is that we have a totality. And I think in addition to everything that Coop just said, which is spot on, you have to add in there the opportunities that Barry had to issue a good, reliable denial, and he did not do that. And this was from the get-go. I shouldn't say denial in the beginning, but in that first segment that we listened to that he filmed a week after his wife's disappearance, he made a plea. He said, "Please," but he didn't tell us what it was, and he left that out. Now, fast forward, all those things that Coop said, and the fact that he did not issue a denial at any time that was a good denial. He had to qualify it, which makes it unreliable. It weakens it, and you can't. It just doesn't work. We don't accept those. And he didn't do that. So all those things, the past tense issue reference was a big deal for me, and those lack of reliable denials, and him taking himself out of the statement, the personal pronoun I. It's literally himself psychologically ejecting from the statement and from the commitment at that point in time. So, yeah, totality.
Dean?
I think that a lot of times people want that silver bullet, just that one thing, but it's like Steve and Greg are both saying that it's the totality of that, and you take everything they've just said about statements, and then you lay on top of that, because it's a layering effect. You then take what's being said, You then lay on top of that, at least the timeline as I understand it. And then at least you add to that then the evidence that at least we're aware of. Obviously, I'm assuming there's a lot more that we don't know. And I think what you see is a compounding effect of all of those things. Nothing is really pushing you in a different direction. That seems to be compounding in one direction. It doesn't mean that something can't come out that will take you in a different direction. But I think that layering of all of that is where you start seeing this thing kind of really getting some momentum.
Okay, Dean. Yeah, what do we got? Good golly, Miss Molly, love you. Thank you for that sweet donation. What do you think about all of his financial moves since her disappearance? His guardianship, selling property, and buying other property. So essentially, when we talked to Gene, Suzanne's father, he told us, Mike and I, he told us that Barry had called like within a very short time of Suzanne's disappearance and asked him if he would sign over legal guardianship and, to some financial circumstance. And he started the conversation with Gene, I loved your daughter. And the dad, who's dying of cancer, by the way, at this point, just kind of falls back and he says, what do you mean you loved my daughter? And Gene tells me this personally. Okay. I heard this right with my own ears, okay, in a conversation with Dad. And he refused to do it. So it was at that point there was a lawyer brought in for the girls, and one of the girls ended up getting the guardianship so that she could sign all the papers. And that was like right after. So that's the information that I have personally, and the information that was told to me. So with Miss Molly's question, Coop, what is your thought process? Just kind of.
Well, it suggests what his state of mind is with respect to Susan's status, and it's permanent. It's permanence, and that his life now has changed, and that he's convicted of that. It's just a state of being now. And when he's attempting to make those moves, he wants to sell the house, sell property, get control of all the assets. There's absolutely no intention or expectation of a future with Susan in it. And so the timing, when he begins to take those steps, the timing becomes very significant if it's very soon thereafter the event of her disappearance. And what you would say is premature. What's a reasonable amount of time? Well, I think we all have our own attitudes and opinions about that. But typically, generally speaking, when you take those moves, if you don't find your loved one and you don't know for sure, typically it's around a year just to get used to the fact of what you're going to deal with, what your future holds. But from my understanding, this takes place within weeks, very few weeks after her disappearance. He buys cars, or he bought a truck, I think. He bought a motorcycle. So he's buying things with the expectation of a life without Susan. And I think that's very concerning.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the fact that now he's used that past tense reference twice that we know of there, it brings me back to what he said about when he was talking with Lauren, the reporter, on the phone, and he said, because her car was there and she's gone. It's a very definite statement that she's gone. You put them all together, and it's a very definite statement. You add the actions to his actions, that we now know that he has processed. Her status is she is not capable of coming back. And so that's why he's going on with his life, and he's doing all these things that in reality the normal person would do is it would take, like Coop said, about a year or so. And some people it takes many years. And it varies with person to person, but certainly not within weeks. It doesn't happen. You don't process that quickly unless you know in your mind that it's definite that she does not have the ability to come back. So the status is it's kind of cementing in here.
Well, and I think that goes back to what we were saying, what I said earlier, and that is the layering effect. So you have all of these things. This now becomes post behavior that just continues to drive it in one direction. And so it doesn't look good.
Yeah, it's been 8 months. So, Chris, in your opinion, what's the probability of a body being moved, referring to cadaver dog sitting? That's always a possibility. I mean, I think everybody on this panel has worked enough homicides to realize that is that a possibility, or missing persons? Yeah, absolutely. It most definitely is. Thank you, AK Sass, for that question. Lynn M., any word about if it's true he has a girlfriend? Well, that's a great question. If he does, in the 8-month period, he's still legally married. I'm not going to go there right now, so we'll just let it take its course. But look around the gym, see what you tell him. If you get something, send me a note. What else you got? And so why hasn't there been any arrests? Well, that's a great question. The district attorney, we got a new one. Hopefully, I hear she's a real firecracker and knows what she's doing. Let's see what the DA comes up with the totality of the case. Next. Thank you, Ann, for that question. Judy, why haven't we heard anything from the girls so far on making a plea for their mom? You know what? So we've got 2 girls here, right? We've got an older girl and a younger girl. I don't want to bring any of the kids into it, personally, with especially the younger girl, but there can be 1,000 reasons, right, guys? I mean, yeah. for this one right here, I mean, there could be a lot of behavior we're just not familiar with. And Judy, thank you. And by the way, there could also be transferred behavior going on too right now, right, Coop? I mean, post potentially.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we don't want to go there because there's other things that potentially could be connected. Great question though, Judy. Thank you so much. Carrie Mick, why wasn't the tree the dog sit on completely pulled? Why dig just a few feet? Great question. I don't know the answer to that, but thank you for asking. Next. Okay. Kathy, where's the nephew? A great question. So there was a nephew, Trevor Noel, who got involved in the very beginning, set up a GoFundMe, and now he's MIA. He's just kind of stepped back, from the totality show. Give him a call. Tell him this panel here would love to talk to him. We'll invite him on as a show, and we'll have everybody back. But thank you for bringing that up, Kathy. Beauty for Ashes. Don't you love these names? Absolutely love this family. This is a great community. Can an arrest be made without a body? Coop, what do you think? Yeah,
absolutely. We've had a number of cases out there of not only an arrest but a conviction of homicide without a body, and it's a totality of the circumstances. It's not any one thing that they're looking at. So absolutely, and we would hope to see that in a case like this, as they tally up all those items of evidence, and keeping in mind that those items of evidence, the totality of that has to eventually equal proof, right? Proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yes.
So we can also have cases where there's evidence but insufficient proof, and so they won't take it forward.
Great point. So, hey, look at this one. Is Barry in the chat tonight? So, question, guys. If Barry's here, Coop, you ran the BAU for a long time. What?
I would expect, yes, I would expect so. I think that if we just logically put ourselves in his shoes, whether or not he was responsible or not, I'd want to know what's being said about me.
Yep. Great.
Yeah,
There's an invitation. Go ahead,
if it was
Steve.
me, if I was in Barry's shoes, I'd be here. And sometimes the question is asked, well, I have a lot of internal investigators in my class, and the question is asked, well, you're teaching all these things, and if you teach to the general public, won't people be able to pull the wool over law enforcement's eyes if they get in trouble? If you have a homicide suspect, a person in your class that ends up being a homicide suspect, won't he now be educated and be able to pull the wool over law enforcement's eyes? And here's the thing, what we're talking about is human nature. And we're talking about the way that this works, the human nature and the words that we use and what comes out of the brain. It happens so fast. It's in a millisecond. And it's that process, that speedy process of the brain. It's something that we cannot control. And so even the people that have the training, they still have that human nature connection, and they cannot beat it. They will still give away the indicators of deception in their language and in their actions. It's very, very difficult to beat it. And typically they think they're smart enough to do it. They think they're all smarter than we are. That's common. They're not the only ones. They do. So.
Well, Steve, it goes back to what you said earlier. It's the totality of those things. So they might be able to sneak by one here or there, get in a sneaky thing, but to be able to do it consistently long term, that's where they always get hung up.
True. They can't keep it up. They can't keep that process going. And so they may pull us over, get one over us, but it won't be. They cannot keep that going.
Yeah.
Okay, so Wendy says, why go straight to the bike site, not to the house? Yeah, so he made that comment that he went to the bike first. I mean, I guess there could be an explanation where they were doing, searching and the cops were there, but I don't know if they had it shut down. But can you think of another reason, Coop? Any thought comes to mind there for you?
I'm not familiar with the exact facts surrounding that situation, only to say that it would be if it was suggest that he was aware where it was, possibly, and it's consistent with the scenario that's been laid out.
Okay.
Can I make a comment on that?
Please.
What he said about that bike was, he said, and went directly to the site where the bike was. I thought that was very significant that he did not say her bike. He said the bike. And I was going to make a comment. I decided not to because I was trying to shorten things up. I have all kinds of, there's much more analysis to this that we haven't covered tonight because it just takes too long.
Keep going.
So
we're good.
The thing about this is, it was very significant to me, is that he did not refer to that as her bike. He said the bike. And it's a very specific bike to him. What Greg told me, and I didn't know this beforehand, but when Greg said that it was a bike, the bike that he actually, that they found was the cheaper bike that he bought a week or two before. It wasn't actually her bike. It was the bike that either he intended to use. It now makes me think, was there planning involved in this? So it wasn't her bike, and that's why. So I was going to point that out earlier, but I decided to leave that out. But great question. I'm glad that was asked because it's very significant now when we're now totality. She's gone, past tense reference, not once, but twice. That's a big deal.
So help you to help Suzanne. Then he hangs up. Yeah. What's your takeaway on that?
I think he's now in a mode of survival, self-survival, and his last concern now is not for Suzanne, but for himself.
Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you, Miss Sophie H. Lucia, have you talked about his note left at the market? Oh, that's a great point. I don't know if you guys were aware of that.
Yeah.
So he goes to the Poncha market, and we have two stories. The first story is there's two clerks there. One is a younger man, and then the manager. And the younger man says that he sees Barry out in front of the market. The market had closed, and he's going through the trash. And he knocks on the door because they were closed at that point. They were shutting down, counting the cash. And the young man opens the door basically and says, "Yeah, can I help you?" And he goes, "Look," he says, "my wife's missing. Have you seen a blue bicycle helmet?" Right. And the kid's like, "Excuse me?" And so then the manager comes over and says, "Can I help you?" And that's where they got into the conversation. And he says, "Look, my wife's missing. Here's her, what she was wearing," and leaves that note, that description of what she was wearing on the counter with the store. And his daughters are going to come back and put some flyers in, is what he tells them. And
it was the helmet. What were the 3 items again?
Well, I don't remember the note. I have to go look it up, Coop, to be honest with you. It was a bike, something about bicycle clothes. Yeah.
Bike, the helmet.
Yeah. What he says, "I'm looking for my wife. Have you seen a blue bicycle helmet?"
I think he left the references of a bike, the helmet, and clothes.
Oh, yes, that's right, on the note. Yeah. Good.
Now, had they been found yet?
We don't know
at that point.
Yeah.
This brings me back to what he said earlier about when he was talking with the reporter, Lauren, and he's convincing Lauren. He says, "Suzanne went on a bike ride every day. She was an avid biker. She did not," there's another past tense reference, "she did not bike around the subdivision. She biked on trails. I don't remember." And then he goes on, but it's a convincing statement about her being an avid biker. Based on that alone, if I was asked to analyze this statement and give input for the investigators, I would say he's going to focus on that bike ride. That's going to be his focus for this whole thing. If I was thinking that he has something to do with it, and he would have to talk me into it. At this point, he's pretty much talking me into that. So the fact that he's only put on that note that he's looking for I believe what it said was blue bike helmet and biker clothes, something to that effect. Just the helmet and the clothes. Why didn't he give a description of his wife? This brings me back again to he didn't issue a reliable denial. He's made the reference she's gone. Past tense reference is her status is that she's not capable of coming back. So what's he going to find? A helmet and clothing, but not her. And anyway, I would say that goes pretty deep actually into how this case is going to turn out.
And Chris, do you know, there was another article, there was something else found out there along the trail, wasn't there? The bike, and wasn't there a piece of clothing or something that was found, or some article? I don't know exactly what it was. I don't know that it's ever been identified.
There are a couple of items that have been collected as evidence, and Ellie has not revealed what those items are. Yeah.
Did they find also the helmet?
I don't know. They're not revealing that.
Okay.
Yeah. Is this premeditated or in the moment, in your opinion, Nana Wigga Chica Wigga? I love it. That's anybody's guess at this point. It sure does appear to be a lot of thought process. Guys, let me kind of throw this up here, and then I got a couple of thoughts. Does this look like organized or disorganized behavior at this point? Coop, let's start with you. And qualify what I mean by that, right? Did Coop lock up?
I think so.
Well, look at him.
I know.
Look how Steve, have you ever seen a mug like that? Okay. So when he comes back, we'll go there. So we're running into the 2-hour mark here. So let's do this. I first of all, let me say, guys, thank you so much for supporting this channel. I'm so excited to have an opportunity to be here with you and to share, these great experts and their expertise with you. Thank you so much. Subscribe, hit that button, or hit that thumb. We are grateful. And then if you subscribe, we can get to a place where, you can share this with your friends and families. And, this is about Suzanne. This is the whole reason this conversation is taking place tonight is about Suzanne and finding and helping her father, her brother, her sister, and the rest of her family. And everybody in this chat tonight, everybody who's going to watch this video, the guys on the ground out there, the boots on the ground out there in Salida, the great people of Salida.
Yep.
You guys are amazing. And Mayfield, you're awesome. And I know where your hearts are. And we can do it together. Absolutely, we can do this together. We can never stop giving her a voice. And all of the true crime community, thank you for your support. I'm not giving up. I made a commitment to Gene and the rest of the family, and I'm not going anywhere. In fact, as you know, I'm mobile now, and so you got to go from there. So the next couple of or the next show we're going to have, I got Dr. Judy Ho, forensic psychologist, coming on. 3 boards she's certified. She's going to come on this Wednesday night, and then I've got a real treat for you next Sunday. It's recorded, but it's a really, really interesting case that I covered. When you get a chance, get over there to Steve's website. If you're in corporate America, this is the guy right there. That's the guy. Bring him in, let him train him up. This guy down here, my brother Dean at the Cold Case Foundation, get over there, support them. They 100% need it to help other families. And for all we know, maybe one day, unfortunately, it would be maybe even Suzanne's. Not if I have anything to do with it. If we can help support law enforcement, then 100% we're going to do that. So Buddy's asleep over here. So I know some folks have asked about Buddy. Thank you, D-Man. D-Man, come from the front, or come to the front. This guy right here, our producer, absolutely love him. He is one of the sharpest guys in the room, obviously in this panel now. Coop just said his power went out. So that's why we just lost him. So love to Coop. D-Man, what do we got? Take us out tonight. We'll see you next time. Aloha.
Everyone, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, hit that notification. Let's go.
Hard working every day. I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts. Wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah. Make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away. You and me go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer